So now we're going to start to talk about you becoming a breath worker and what that means. How do you set up your agreements or your contracts with those that you work with? Whenever you engage in a breathwork session, there is an agreement between you, the practitioner, and the client. First of all, in breathwork, we're teaching a self-regulated skill. And that means that the person that is receiving the session is taking responsibility for what they get from it. They're not just passively receiving something like a massage. They have to know that they are taking personal responsibility for how they conduct the session within themselves and what they receive. That the client knows that this is a tool for self-exploration and healing. So you're teaching them more than a one-time process. You're teaching them something that they take with them and will continue to use on their own. You as a practitioner are a coach. You're not doing it for them, but you're helping them gain an expertise that will be a lifelong tool and gift. There are things that you will need to know from the person that you're working with. For example, if they have a physical disease that's going on, or they are on medications of some sort. So there's information that you will need as a practitioner. That information may depend on the skills that you already have before you became a breath worker. For example, you may be a coach, you may be a physical therapist, and you are going to combine your skills as a breath worker with the skills that you already have. If there is physical contact, that you will let people know that they have the option, whether they want physical contact or not. And so even if they say, yes, it's okay with me, for example, to touch their shoulder or put your hand on their heart, even if they say that's okay, I always ask, even at the time, because something may have changed by the time they say in the beginning it's okay to when they're in the session. So you always want to make sure that you're having permission from your client for any type of physical contact. This is even true when you're doing a virtual session. You may be doing a session with someone on Zoom and you say to them, is it okay if I virtually put my hand on your shoulder or touch your heart? And informing them and getting their acceptance or permission will make a much stronger contact between you and your client. Your client should also know that when you're doing faster than normal breathing, it can induce a non-ordinary state of consciousness. I always let people know that they, however, will be fully awake. We're not hypnotizing people. They'll be fully awake, but they can go into an altered state when we do the faster than normal breathing. We also have a professional code of ethics. And in this code of ethics, we are operating with an agreement of confidentiality. So what someone tells us during a session is not something that we will broadcast or talk to other people about, except perhaps a supervisor. It's important to let your client know your availability after a session. Some people will go into very profound states, and it's important that they know that they can contact you if they need to. They also will want to know about follow-up. Are you available for future sessions? Who in their community might be someone they could contact if you weren't available? So it's important that you let them know about their safety and availability even after the session. I always give some sort of homework for people so that they know what to do and how to continue to grow with skills that they learn in breathwork. I also let them know what resources, for example, books or other classes that may be useful for them. And it's always important to be very clear and transparent about payment for your service. People should know that before they get into a session and know how to make payment and so on. And some practitioners prefer to have the payment made before the session. Now, that's up to you, but it's important that you know what works for you. Be very clear, even if, for example, you may not charge money when you're in training as a breath worker, but there's still a contract. All of these things are still applicable, even if you're not charging money. There are some things that you expect from your client. You expect that if you make an appointment, they're going to show up and that they're going to take it seriously. So there's always an exchange back and forth between the client and the practitioner. Now, I want to talk about contact. We talked about contract. Now I want to talk about contact, which is the energetic interface between a practitioner and a client. So you, as a breath worker, are responsible for your thoughts, your feelings, your words, and your actions toward a client. And this takes place even before a session. So how you make contact with someone and make an agreement that you're going to do a session, you are conveying a lot of information just in the quality of how you communicate with people. I said that we're responsible for our thoughts and our feelings. That doesn't mean that if we have a negative thought or a judgment that we're bad, but we have to take responsibility that we've had that and not continue it. So we may have a judgment about someone that we talked to even before the session, but it's important that we don't reinforce that judgment and have our mental and emotional state be an impediment to a successful session with them. So even now, as we are talking about you potentially seeing clients and working with them, and this doesn't mean necessarily that you set up a for-pay career. It could be even you just do it with friends or with family members. You're still responsible for how you monitor your feelings and thoughts about the people you work with. Part of how you market or advertise is not just the flyers that you create or the messages that you post on social media. It's the energy that you're emitting, even right now, thinking about working with clients. This doesn't mean that you can't have fear, you can't have doubts, but what do you do with those fears and doubts are very important before, during, and after a session with someone. So during a session, judgments may come up or feelings may come up toward the person that you're working with. Again, it doesn't mean you're bad if you have a negative thought or feeling, but it's what you do with it that counts. Your body is your instrument as a breath worker, and you may be picking up feelings that a person has about themselves. They don't see themselves as worthy or attractive or competent. So recognize if you are getting these thoughts and don't go into collusion with them. Notice your thoughts and feelings after a session. You may have judgments about yourself or your client that you didn't do well enough or didn't perform in the way that you thought they expected of you or you expected of yourself. Release as best you can all those judgments and know that what has happened is what needed to happen for that time, and you'll learn from it. You'll grow from it. Do not continue to harbor negative thoughts about yourself or your client after a session. Now, this is not to say that we have to be perfect and we have to have holy and wonderful thoughts all the time, because none of us does. But we are responsible to recognize if we start to get into a pattern of judgment and separation from others. In breath work, we recognize that both the practitioner and the client are learning and growing at the same time, even though we have different roles. Just as we've said that the client is responsible for the conclusions they reach or what they get from a session, so we, the practitioner, are also responsible for what we learn and how we grow from every session.